Hello and welcome. Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful ideas in the entire blockchain space, smart contracts. I mean, these things are the absolute engine of Web3, a totally revolutionary technology that's changing how we make agreements by automating trust itself. So, how in the world does that actually work? Let's find out.
Just for a second, think about a vending machine. It's a perfect little contract, right? You put in a coin, that's the condition, and a snack comes out. That's the outcome. It's guaranteed. There's no cashier to argue with, no manager to call for help. The deal just happens automatically. So what if our most important financial agreements worked with that exact same unstoppable logic? All right, so here's our game plan for the next few minutes. We're going to kick things off with the basic idea of contracts that run themselves. Then we'll see how they actually get from a line of code onto the blockchain. After that, we'll explore the Web3 revolution they've kicked off, take an honest look at the risks, and finally, we'll wrap up with how you can get involved safely. So let's jump right in at the very beginning. What exactly are we talking about when we say a contract can literally run itself? Well, at its core, a smart contract is just an agreement written in computer code instead of a bunch of legal jargon. It lives on a blockchain, and because it's just code, it automatically carries out the terms of the deal when certain things happen. Just think of it like a simple rule. If this happens, then that happens. It's really that simple and that powerful. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, comparing it to the old way of doing things. Traditional contracts, they need middlemen, lawyers, banks, you name it. They're slow, they're expensive, and honestly, they can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. Smart contracts, they just cut out the middleman entirely. They're automated, they're lightning fast, and because they're on the blockchain, the rules are totally tamper-proof. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. We're talking about immutability. See, this is possible because of something called cryptographic hashing, which is basically a fancy way of turning data into a unique digital fingerprint that can't be faked. So once a smart contract is on the blockchain with this fingerprint, it cannot be changed. The deal is the deal, period. And that creates a level of trust and certainty that's just about impossible to get with regular old agreements. So how does an idea for an agreement actually become this unstoppable program on a global computer like Ethereum? Let's pop the hood and look at the journey from a simple piece of code to a live contract on the blockchain. It's really a clear four-step journey. First, a developer writes the contract's rules in a programming language, something like Solidity. Second, that human-readable code gets compiled or translated into a language the blockchain can actually understand. Third, it's deployed. It's sent to the blockchain where it gets a permanent, unchangeable address. And finally, boom, it runs. From that point on, users can interact with it, and its functions will execute exactly as they were written, forever. And to really demystify this, the very first contract a lot of developers write is a super simple Hello World program, because at its core, that's all a smart contract really is. It's just logic, written down in code, that can store and change information based on the commands it gets. It's programming, not some kind of dark magic. Now this is where it gets really, really exciting, because this simple concept of self-executing code is the fundamental building block for the entire Web3 revolution that we keep hearing about. I mean, these automated agreements are the engine powering some of the biggest innovations out there. Think about decentralized finance or DeFi. It's only possible because smart contracts can hold and move money based on rules without needing a bank's permission. NFTs, they exist because a smart contract can guarantee and publicly prove that you, and only you, own a unique digital item. And DAOs, well, they run on smart contracts that automatically enforce voting and spending rules, creating entire organizations without a single boss. And the ambition here is just massive. I mean, as early as 2016, a project called the DAO, which was basically a decentralized venture capital fund, raised a staggering $150 million in a crowd sale. This really showed the world that incredibly complex, high-stakes organizations could be built entirely on this brand new foundation. But this is where the story takes a really critical turn, because the very thing that makes smart contracts so powerful, their immutability, also creates this huge responsibility. Because if the code is law, what happens when that law is flawed? Well, that very same project, the DAO, became the ultimate cautionary tale. A hacker found a vulnerability, a tiny flaw in its smart contract code, and managed to drain $50 million. This event really forced a hard conversation in the community. The code may be unchangeable, sure, but it's written by humans, and,
Well, humans make mistakes. What's really interesting, though, is how the community learns and evolves from these attacks. The re-entrancy attack that hit the DAO is now widely understood, and the defense is actually pretty simple. Update your internal balances before you send any funds out. For other risks, like integer overflows, where a number gets so big, it basically breaks the math. Newer programming languages just have protections built right in. The key insight is that for pretty much every known risk, the community has worked to develop a way to fight back.
Now, the ultimate theoretical threat, kind of the doomsday scenario, is something called a 51% attack. This is where a single person or group could get control of the majority of the network's computing power, giving them the ability to potentially change the unchangeable ledger. Now, while this is incredibly difficult and crazy expensive to pull off on a major network like Ethereum, it's still the big one that developers are always working to defend against.
So, knowing all this, the incredible potential and the very real risks, how can you start exploring this world safely? Let's get into some practical, actionable steps. Okay, listen up, because here are 4 golden rules for staying safe out there. First, only interact with projects that have been professionally audited by security firms. Second, start small. Never, ever put in more than you're truly comfortable losing. Third, do your own research. Really dig in and understand what you're interacting with. And finally, the most important rule of all, guard your private keys and that 12-word seed phrase with your life. Seriously, think of it as the master key to your entire digital world. If you lose it or someone else gets it, it is game over. The key takeaway here is really one of empowerment. This technology, which was once just for hardcore developers, is becoming more and more accessible every single day. You do not have to be a coder or a Wall Street trader to understand these concepts and see the incredible opportunities they're creating. So that leaves us with one final thought. At the end of the day, smart contracts are really just about turning our promises into code. Whether it's a simple bet between friends, a rental agreement, or a super complex financial derivative, the potential is absolutely everywhere. So now that you understand the foundation, what's the very first agreement that you would want to see